The voice on the voicemail sounded ordinary. Not frightened, not rushed, not desperate. Just a woman speaking to someone she trusted. And that was exactly what made it so disturbing. Because after that message, Tina Satchwell seemed to vanish. No frantic goodbye. No warning. No sign of a struggle. Just a woman who stepped out of her own life and never stepped back into it. For years, investigators searched for answers. Friends wondered if she had started over somewhere else. Rumors spread, theories multiplied. But the truth wasn't waiting in some distant city. The truth was much closer than anyone could have imagined. Closer than the police. Closer than the neighbors. Closer than the husband who sat in interviews and spoke about his missing wife. The truth had been buried for years. And every day, people walked right over it. Tina Satchwell was known as someone who cared deeply about the people around her. Friends described her as kind, emotional, and fiercely loyal. She loved animals, especially dogs, and she poured affection into the small details of everyday life. To outsiders, her marriage to Richard Satchwell appeared stable. They had built a life together in Well, a quiet coastal town in Ireland where everyone seemed to know everyone else's business. But as often happens in stories like this, what people saw from the outside wasn't necessarily what was happening behind closed doors. When Tina suddenly disappeared, confusion spread through the community. People searched for explanations that made sense. Some believed she had left voluntarily. Others insisted she never would have abandoned the life she had built. Richard told people she had packed belongings and left after an argument. He spoke calmly, consistently, convincingly, and because there was very little evidence suggesting otherwise, many people didn't know what to believe. The uncertainty created a vacuum, and rumors rushed in to fill it. As days became weeks, concern slowly transformed into fear. Missing person investigations often depend on tiny details: a phone call, a sighting, a financial transaction. But Tina seemed to disappear into thin air. Her trail ended abruptly, as if someone had simply erased her from the world. Investigators followed leads, interviewed witnesses, and tried to reconstruct her final known movements, but every path eventually faded into nothing. Meanwhile, Richard remained at the center of attention. Reporters spoke to him, neighbors watched him, police questioned him. Through it all, he maintained the same story. Tina had left, they had argued, she walked away. There was sadness in his voice, but there was also certainty. The story never seemed to change. Over time, that consistency became one of the reasons many people accepted it. After all, if you were lying, wouldn't cracks begin to show? Years passed, the kind of years that slowly drain urgency from an investigation. New cases arrive, new tragedies demand attention, memories blurred, witnesses move away, details become harder to verify. Tina's disappearance gradually became one of those mysteries people discussed in quiet conversations, wondering if the answer would ever be found. Every anniversary brought renewed attention, but no breakthrough. Yet there was always something unsettling about the case. Friends couldn't shake the feeling that Tina hadn't left willingly. The woman they knew simply didn't fit the story. She was deeply attached to her animals. She maintained close relationships. She wasn't someone who disappeared without explanation. That lingering discomfort remained alive beneath the surface, refusing to disappear even as the years stretched on. Investigators revisited the case repeatedly. Fresh eyes examined old evidence. New detectives reviewed old interviews. Sometimes the smallest inconsistency can unlock an entire mystery. Sometimes a sentence spoken years earlier suddenly sounds different when heard again. The challenge was separating fact from assumption. So much time had passed that memories had become tangled with speculation. Richard continued living his life in the same house, the same property, the same place where he claimed his wife had last been before walking away forever. Too many people, that seemed significant. If he had something to hide, why stay? Why remain in the exact location that would always attract scrutiny? The decision appeared counterintuitive, and perhaps that was precisely why it worked. Sometimes the safest hiding place is the one nobody thinks to question. As investigators dug deeper, they began examining details that had previously seemed unimportant: renovations, household changes, timelines, statements, little pieces that individually meant very little but collectively formed an uncomfortable picture. Cases solved after many years often don't unravel dramatically. They unravel thread by thread until the entire fabric suddenly collapses. The atmosphere around the investigation began to change. Quietly at first, detectives became increasingly interested in events surrounding Tina's disappearance rather than events after it. That shift may sound subtle, but it was crucial. Instead of asking where Tina went, investigators started asking whether she had ever left at all. It was a question that changed everything. People who followed the case noticed renewed activity. Investigators appeared determined, focused, methodical. There was a sense that something important was happening behind the scenes, yet no one outside the investigation knew exactly what. The mystery that had lingered for years suddenly felt alive again. For Richard, attention returned in full force. Every interview from the past was scrutinized, every statement revisited, every detail examined. What once looked like consistency now raised different questions. Had he repeated the same story because it was true, or because he had rehearsed it for years? The difference between those possibilities was enormous. Then came the search. The kind of search that immediately changes the mood surrounding a case. Investigators returned to the property with a level of intensity that suggested they were looking for something very specific. Neighbors watched from a distance. Reporters gathered. Rumors spread rapidly. Nobody knew what authorities expected to find, but everyone sensed that the case had reached a turning point. Inside the house, detectives examined areas that had existed in plain sight for years, rooms people had walked through countless times, spaces that seemed ordinary, familiar, harmless, yet some of history's darkest secrets have hidden behind ordinary walls and beneath ordinary floors. Sometimes the most terrifying discoveries are found in places that looked completely normal. As investigators worked, a shocking detail emerged. Attention focused on an area beneath a staircase. At first glance, it appeared unremarkable, just another part of a family home. But beneath that section of the house was something nobody expected to find. The discovery sent a shockwave through the investigation. Suddenly, years of uncertainty began collapsing into a single horrifying possibility. The realization was almost impossible to process. If investigators were right, Tina had never left the property. She hadn't vanished into another town. She hadn't started a new life. She hadn't disappeared into anonymity. The answer had allegedly been sitting inside that house all along, hidden beneath the feet of everyone who entered. When forensic examinations continued, the scale of the deception became clearer. Authorities believed Tina had been killed years earlier. The argument Richard had described wasn't the beginning of a disappearance. According to investigators, it was the beginning of something much darker. The story that had guided the case for years was suddenly transformed into evidence of a covered-up. The emotional impact was devastating. Friends who had spent years hoping for answers finally received them, but not in the way anyone wanted. The possibility that Tina had remained hidden beneath the very home she once lived in felt almost unbearable. It wasn't simply a murder allegation anymore. It was the collapse of an entire narrative that had survived for years. Investigators concluded that Tina Satchwell had not voluntarily disappeared. She had been killed. Her remains were discovered buried beneath the staircase inside the home she shared with Richard. The location stunned the public because it was so close, so ordinary, and so impossible to imagine. For years, the mystery had seemed vast and unknowable. In reality, the truth had allegedly been concealed within the house itself. The final revelation transformed every previous moment in the story. The interviews, the searches, the theories, the years of uncertainty. What appeared to be a disappearance was, according to investigators, a homicide hidden in plain sight. The woman everyone had been searching for had never left. She had been there the entire time, waiting for the truth to be uncovered. For years, a staircase stood silently inside that house. People walked over it, visitors crossed it. Life continued above it, and beneath every footstep, the truth remained buried, waiting for someone to finally dig deep enough to hear it.